Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in again. I am Katie Batesman, the Content Director at SheCanCode, and in today's episode I'm joined by three incredible women in engineering to discuss how to successfully transition from education to the private sector. We'll be chatting about choosing the right degree, tips on getting your first role, gaining confidence as a junior woman in tech, how to navigate tricky conversations, and much more. So joining from Bramble Energy today is Sharon Oahimijie, Junior Project Manager, Elmer, Customer Solutions Manager, and Eliska, Krizova, Product Systems Engineer, all from Bramble Energy. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, we're going to kick off. We've got so much to discuss, but we're going to kick off with some backgrounds first, because I'd love to hear a bit about each of you. Sharon, should we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into tech, where you're from.
Yeah, that's definitely fine. Hello, my name is Sharon. I'm originally from Nigeria and just moved to the UK in 2018 for university. I just recently graduated from the University of Surrey last July, studying chemical engineering. Straight after uni, I worked in recruitment for about 3 months. And from October, I started working at Bramble Energy as a junior project manager. So day to day, I mainly focus on managing grant-funded zero-emission projects. I also support in bid writing, carrying out quarterly review meetings, presenting project outcomes to monitoring officers and the business at large. So that's kind of like a brief summary of Sharon.
Amazing, Sharon. It sounds like you have a lot of responsibility. Ashling, yourself.
Yes. Hi, I'm Ashling. I'm the Customer Solutions Manager at Bramble Energy. I have a master's in natural sciences, and I've always had a keen interest in sustainability. When I first left university, I did a placement, an internship funded by the Royal Society of Chemistry in making materials for water electrolyzers and fuel cells. And that's what really got me focused and interested in specifically the hydrogen economy. And whilst I was working there, I sort of gradually transitioned from a lab-based research role to a customer-facing research role, and then finally to business development, which is what I'm currently doing at Bramble. So I work with new customers and partners to explain our technology to them, explain the benefits of our technology to them, and try to further develop it for their specific requirements and needs.
Amazing. And Eliska, yourself, last but not least.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Eliska. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, born and raised. Growing up, I really enjoyed chemistry. That was really like my thing, and also like all the technical subjects, but also always felt like that I was really interested in these subjects, but also a little bit discouraged. I feel like that really boils down and stems from what society teaches us and what they teach us in school, that these technical subjects are mostly for boys. But I pushed through and I went to university, and I studied at University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague. I studied chemical engineering with a specific focus on the energy sector, specifically oil and gas industry and oil and gas sector. And then I somehow fell into this fuel cell world, this clean tech world. And it was a bit of a random coincidence. There was this one role that I saw in Midlands. It was for a fuel cell company based in Midlands. I was still studying in the Czech Republic, but I applied. And to my surprise, they invited me for an interview, which was crazy to me. Did the interview, thought it went terribly wrong, but I actually got the role, and the rest is history. When I worked there as a fuel cell engineer. So I worked on development of fuel cell stacks for automotive and aero industry, but also fuel cell stacks for the stationary power applications. So I did a lot of that, worked there for about 3.5 years. And after 3.5 years, I felt like maybe it's time to move on. And that's when the opportunity here at Bramble arose, and I took it. And this is what I do now. I'm a product systems engineer. I do lean on a lot on the fuel cell stack knowledge that I learned in my previous company, but I'm also learning a lot about the system side of things. And me and my team, we're currently trying to put our very first product onto the market. It's been a challenge, but that's what we're doing.
Amazing. I love the fact that you went for an interview and you thought it all went wrong, and actually they offered you the job.
I feel like this is such a terrible thing. Like, I really like to emphasize that you should never listen to this inner critic that's just trying to sabotage you. And I feel like I've come a really long way from thinking this way, you know? I don't really do that anymore.
Yes, we had a live webinar recently about imposter syndrome, and
yeah,
it's exactly that. Those thoughts creep in, and before you know it, you've talked yourself out of a wonderful career. And it's just finding strategies, obviously, to, as you say, to ignore the inner voice.
100%, yeah.
I love the fact that you all have STEM backgrounds, and because I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about what you chose to study at uni, and why, and do you have any advice on picking the right degree? I suppose because for those of us that might, our listeners that are thinking of coming into the industry, do you have to have a technical degree? How do you even pick that?
In terms of why I chose to study chemical engineering, so I guess that stemmed from so back home in Nigeria, we had something called the Black Suits Menace. So it was basically black thick dust that would cover like our homes, clothes, skin, etc. So I think it was caused from emissions into the environment, and it was mostly prominent in the River States area, which was where I was based at the time. So I guess just experiencing it and watching people like fall ill from that made me kind of want to focus in finding an innovative solution to work in a sector rather that was focused in finding innovative solutions to environmental problems. So I guess that's why the interest of chemical engineering came into play. And from there, I went into studying that at uni, and from there, finding Bramble Energy, which is also kind of focused in the zero emission as well. I felt like that glued with my intentions. And also, I guess the good thing about studying chemical engineering is you don't need to actually work as a chemical engineer. It gives you a lot of like soft skills as well as technical skills, which can be applied in different job roles. So it doesn't make you very strict on, this is what you study, so this is exactly what you are going to be doing in your career for the rest of your life or something like that. In terms of people, like advice on people on what to study, I feel like it depends on what you're drawn to. If you're drawn to STEM, I feel like you should give it a go. You should definitely find what interests you and then lean towards it. It might be difficult to pinpoint kind of what you're interested in, especially maybe at a young age. But the good thing is you'd graduate maybe in your, I'm going to say 20s. So I guess that's the age to sort of experiment and see what exactly sticks and what you like or what you enjoy and sort of kick on with that. You don't need to have, for example, a project management degree to actually work as a project manager, for example.
Yes, definitely. I love the fact that you said that. I think it is a misconception in this industry that you have to have very techie qualifications, and you go into a very technical sounding role. But actually, as you said, there are so many soft skills that that you can bring to a role anyway, and that are also super important. So interesting that normally I hear people say, or a teacher encouraged me into a certain area, or a parent, and actually you were experiencing it firsthand, what that you wanted to bring about change, because it was something that you were experiencing firsthand around you. So yeah, it's normally you hear, oh, it's an encouragement at school or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely my dad was very interested and keen in me studying that as well, but it was just kind of like the emissions it was just very bad. Like you have to kind of like regularly clean the houses and stuff and like wear masks. So it was definitely a factor as well. And I guess also being a woman in engineering also played a role, just kind of breaking the misconception of, women cannot study engineering, or it's more difficult for us to do that, or just basically making sure to be part of the change, or like part of the person people would look up to. She studied it, so I can do it. You don't necessarily have to, like I said, just work in the role if that's not what interests you in the future.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And Aisling, yourself, what about you? Were you encouraged into your degree by somebody, or how did you pick your degree? And how would you advise somebody else to pick theirs?
Yeah, so I think I ended up in my degree, I think because I'm bad at making decisions. So it wasn't so much. So I did chemistry, physics, and maths as my A levels, and I really enjoyed all of them. I don't think I ever really thought engineering specifically is what I want to do. I enjoyed like the theory of it, I think, at the time, more than the applying the science. So I knew I wanted to do, I guess, a straight science subject. So I chose natural sciences because it allowed me to choose some chemistry, some physics, some maths. And I think in hindsight, something like a materials science degree probably would have allowed me to do all of that as well. But I think it's a lot of it sort of knowing what's available, and finding a degree program in a university that you really like. So I went to Bath, and it was great. I loved my time at university, and definitely really glad that I studied the degree that I did, because I effectively got to build my own degree. I got to choose, all of the modules from each subject that I wanted to do the most, and ultimately ended up with a degree that sort of then led me towards electrochemistry and hydrogen. So yeah, really glad that I did what I did, but I guess it was almost a happy accident that I couldn't make a decision and then ended up doing something that I was really happy with. So yeah.
Well, it's nice to hear that. Yeah, I hear a lot of ladies fall into the industry. I've never heard it referred to as a happy accident. I couldn't make a decision. It turned out to be a great career. Anyway, Eliska, yourself, were you encouraged in some way, or discouraged perhaps by others?
A little bit of both. I was encouraged and discouraged at the same time. Like I said, I had this respect from like all technical subjects, but then I decided to study chemical engineering, which quite frankly wasn't easy for me, and perhaps I wasn't natural as some of my other colleagues were, but ultimately I just pushed through it, and rolled with the punches. I think when you're 18 or 19, when you're choosing what to do with your future, I think it can be very overwhelming for people.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people out there who know what they want to do in the future, and that's amazing. I love that for them. But I think there's a bigger majority that actually doesn't know what they want to do. But if you do choose to study any, engineering degree, then I think any of it would be a great choice, because it teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to approach a problem. And that's an incredibly transferable skill that you can take into any job role. Just like Sharon said, you can become a project manager, you could be a lot of things. So I view these engineering degrees as a stepping stone. It's a starting point. That's not where you're going to end up. In my case, I would basically choose something that's near and dear to your heart and go for it. And if it's not okay, if you don't enjoy it, that's okay. You can always switch, put yourself out there and do more internships and stuff like that. Just explore different areas.
Yes,
Yeah,
I love that.
That would be my advice.
You're absolutely right. When you're 18, I think you think you have to, you're backed into a corner and you have to pick a career path. But as you said, you can, there are transferable skills when you take STEM subjects anyway. So it's a fantastic area to go in to be able to move around the industry. Anyway, I think it's such a worry when you're 18. Are you doing the right
100%.
thing?
I know, I was really worried. And in the end, you look at it, you look at it now and it's like, you know what? It turned out just fine. All these worries 10 years ago, does it even matter now? No.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you have graduated and you're looking for your first role. Are there any values we should be looking for in a company when you go out looking for that first role? Sharon, we'll go back to you.
So for me personally, I think I have a couple things I would, look out for to see if the company has in terms of values. Diversity is very important for me and very big for me, as I feel like that's one of the top values that I would want a company to have, that I could potentially be working for. Diversity, I guess, also the overall culture of the company, how they treat its employees, its work-life balance. So an example could even be like social events. It may be, for some people, it may be kind of like a waste of time, or they could probably be using it to maybe gain profits or something, but it builds bonds. It gives you opportunities to actually network with your colleagues that are working in different departments that you could probably not have interacted with prior. Another, and I think this is the last one, which is also important for me in terms of company values, is clear progression route. I think that's also something that is very important, that maybe is not very, people don't put like so much thought into it. It's, before you join a company, what's the progression look like? What does you have a clear plan on the targets you need to hit for you to be promoted, or like what do you need to have achieved to go to the next level? And are there any learning opportunities for you? Are there any opportunities for training? I feel like there's a lot to consider, but those are my top 3 values.
Yes, I love that. I think we ask more questions nowadays, don't we? And I don't think that's just a pandemic thing, that the way that we think about the world of work has changed. I think in terms of whether you're going to be happy at work and the culture, and quite rightly, as you said, all of those things are affected by things like diversity, what your team is going to be like, how you're going to be sharing ideas, whether or not you'll be happy day to day. And I think they're things that we ask more now, and I think probably we didn't. I think especially when you're young as well, you're thinking, I just need a job. I just need a job. And that's it,
100%.
But I think people think more, nowadays, what is it going to be like? It's not just the benefits, is it? The salary, whether or not you get a pension and all of those things.
Yeah. Just to add more to that, I guess a reason for that could be, you could be getting the best paying job ever and you're just unhappy. That would reduce your productivity in general for that company, and it would genuinely not make you want to go to work. And that's a huge thing, given the fact that work is almost your whole life. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And just retaining good staff as well. They just need to make sure that you're happy in your role. And as you said, it's not just about pay. So many other things filter into that. Aisling, are there any values that you look for in a company when you're looking to apply?
So I definitely would agree with everything that Sharon's just said. Completely agree with those as really important values. I guess, as well as all of those things, I'd also, and this I guess can be harder to gauge at the interview stage, but look for someone that is going to be a champion for you, especially when you're starting out. You're going to learn the fastest and you're going to be developing the fastest in those first couple of years of work in your first role. To look for a manager or someone within the company that can be a mentor for you, whether that's within your team or just in the wider company, someone that will, suggest training that you can go on, bring you into meetings so you can be present and understand more widely what's going on, someone that trusts you to work autonomously, so that you continue to grow and you get to try new things and you get to be uncomfortable and try and really push yourself. But also you've got someone there that's supporting you and believes that you have that capability. Because I think it's those first few years of work that, you know, you really build a lot of confidence in your own ability, and having somebody there going, I know this is hard and I know you've never done it before, but I believe that you can do it and you can do it really well. That really goes a long way to believing that you can do it and that you will do it well. And then obviously by trying, you get better at it, or at least you realize what you don't want to do ever again. And that's really valuable to know as well.
Yes, because you're absolutely right. The first couple of years, they really do build your confidence, or they can knock your confidence. If you know you start something new, you think you're going to be great at it, and actually you might, as you said, not have somebody that champions you. Because a lot of people, they say, you know, they leave managers, they don't leave jobs, they tend to leave managers. So if it's somebody that you don't align with, or just you just don't mesh well with, and you feel like, you know, you're not going anywhere in that company, you're absolutely right. Picking the right company, knowing who your line manager is so important. I think though, when as you said, when you're first out of university, you're just thinking, I just need a salary, and then it quickly dawns on you what your day to day will be like.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't like your manager, it's, you know, that's it. Jobs over.
Game over.
Eliska, you're nodding. I can.
I absolutely agree with everything that Sharon and Aisling mentioned. I think, but I also agree with you. When I was, you know, when I graduated and was looking for a job, the only thing I care about was having a job. I didn't really care that much what it was going to be. And I agree with you when you say nowadays people look at it differently. You know, they want to see if there's a diversity in the company. Is there a progression plan? Those are the things that I now look for when I search for jobs, but that's not necessarily what I did way back when. I also agree with Aisling on having a good manager. That really helped me in my early career, because my first manager was amazing. Shout out to Kay. He was fantastic, and he really helped me install this confidence in me and just, you know, putting myself out there a little bit more. So just
really make or break moment in your
absolutely yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about tips and tricks for adapting from university into, you know, your first proper job. It is a baptism of fire sometimes. We think we've learned everything that we need to know at university, and then you get into your first job and you think, oh, I was not prepared for that. Sharon, let's start with you. Do you have any, you know, tips and tricks to how to adapt from university into your first role?
I guess I went through that just a couple of months ago.
Did you feel that way when you came in? Did you think, oh gosh, I thought I was prepared, but
yes,
maybe not?
Definitely. I feel like with uni, you have more flexibility. You do have classes, but you don't have classes 9 to 5, or you don't have classes 9 to 5 every day. So I guess my initial like feeling or reaction once I got off when I finished uni and started my first job was excitement. I was so excited. But it is a lot. It's a lot. You need to know how to navigate your colleagues. You need to know how to actually speak to them. You need to learn how to speak to be heard. I feel like that's also a whole different ball game. You also need to kind of learn patience and learn when to speak up for yourself, because you can easily be shut down in a work environment. I guess there's that. But in terms of the pros, you know, I think I was talking to Aisling like a couple of days ago about this, and she was like, you know, you don't have to work during the weekend. That's a huge plus. That's a huge plus, you know. With uni, if you have exams, I guess you're going to study every second of the day. There's no difference between weekend and weekday, really. It's just when you actually have to show up for classes. But, you know, just putting all that aside, I guess those are things I needed to wrap my head around when moving into the corporate environment. And I had not done placement before. I had only worked in part-time roles, and I think part-time roles is a bit different because, you know, I'd just worked in like Sainsbury's, for example, you don't need that much soft skills, as you do working in a corporate environment, working very closely with other people. And I didn't start on a graduate scheme. So I was working with people that were maybe twice my age. So it's kind of like when they tell you to do this and you have so much workload, how are you able to navigate through that? How are you able to kind of like prioritize your time? Because your time is yours. You have to learn how to prioritize it and make sure not to fall behind. So it's a lot to wrap your head around in the first couple months, if I'm being 100% transparent. But I do think it gets better with time. You get more accustomed to it. You know what works for you. You know what to say, when to say it. And yeah, I think that's what I would say about it.
Yeah, I've heard that before about prioritizing time and that your time is yours, because sometimes I've heard that on here, ladies say you get in a job and actually when it's your first job, you don't realize that you're allowed to prioritize your own time and that you don't have to, keep taking everything that's given to you by your manager. And if it is too much, you need to speak up and say, and you don't know that. It takes a while to navigate, really, doesn't it?
Definitely, I agree.
Aisling, have you ever experienced something like that when you joined the world of work? What kind of tips and tricks would you share?
Yeah, so I think definitely when you first join, the first company when you've graduated, definitely don't be afraid to ask questions, because what's expected of you at university is not necessarily the same, or it's not necessarily presented in the same way as what's expected of you at work. If someone says, can you write a report or write a summary, that's not necessarily the same as your coursework or the report that you wrote for that module at university. So understand what the parameters are and don't be afraid to ask questions. What does this presentation need to look like? What level does it need to be pitched at? Does it need to be, the same as my research project in final year? Or does it need to be, a digestible weekly, slide that just summarizes what I've worked on? What does that look like as a company? And, you'll get to know those things the longer you're there. But it also helps if you just ask those questions up front so that you can understand that. And then I think that also leads on to sort of knowing your audience, and understanding that pitching things for different people within the business, you're pitching things to a different level. So if you're talking about something with one of your peers, somebody else that's at the same level as you, it can be very casual and you can just sort of have a chat about what you're working on. Your line manager may also want to have a really informal, casual sort of update meeting with you, or you may find that it's much more formalized. And then if that goes sort of above them, then it might be additional layers of preparation required. But I think just understanding what different areas of the business require, and how that needs to look in order to be put across correctly. But again, don't be afraid to ask questions and find out what people are actually looking for.
Yeah, because people don't seem to mind when you're new, do they? I mean, no question is meant to be. No question is a stupid question. If you're still asking them several years in, then
that's a problem.
But when you're first starting, the majority of people seem to be quite open to helping, don't they? So I suppose it's just as we were saying with Sharon, just kind of navigating your way through, all the things that you don't learn at university, like you said, just knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, dealing with hierarchy. They're all skills we don't learn when we're doing our degree.
Exactly.
Eliska, yourself, what was it like for you? Is there anything that stands out for you?
For me, I think, and what I would encourage people to do, you can actually start preparing for this work life whilst you're still at university by taking internships or doing placement years and stuff. I think that's a really great way of exploring if this particular job role is for you. Like for myself, I did an internship in the logistics department at Procter and Gamble way back when, and I realized, you know what, this isn't for me, and that's okay. Like you just move on to another one. Like it's just good having that exposure and put in the the knowledge that you've learned into the practical, world.
Yeah, just experiencing lots of different
experience
things.
in lots of different things. 100%.
Try something else. Yeah, which I think is not a mindset of a lot of young people. I had a wonderful lady on here, and she said to me, I realised after university I didn't have a graduate opportunity, and she thought she'd failed because she didn't have an opportunity as soon as she was leaving uni, and it just seemed ridiculous. You know, she got snapped up by a wonderful company, and I think in her mind there was a set path, and that's what you had to stick to. Like you said, that path can change, and you can move around all the time, and everything is should just be seen as an opportunity or an
100%.
experience. In terms of networking, do you think that having a network is important, and how can our listeners go about building a community? I must admit, this is not something I thought of when I was at university. It was something that I heard about more once I got into the world of work, and people started saying, get a network, build a network, but it's not something I thought of as a graduate. Would you ladies agree with that? Eliska, I can see you nodding straight off.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly didn't hear it. It's just now that I'm a little bit older, I'm like hearing these words more and more. But networking doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out there and go to these networking events. Networking is everything that you do. It's the little chit chat that you have, in the morning, and in the kitchen with your colleagues. All of that is networking, and I think you should work on these little relationships, because the chances are that in the future that person will find you another job. That's what networking means to me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Actually,
it's these peripheral relationships that you don't even realize. All of this is networking
that you're making. I love the fact that you said it's not just networking events. Ashley, is that something you agree with?
Yeah.
That when I was younger, that filled me with dread to think, I have to go to a networking event.
Yeah, so it being in business development now, I go to a lot of trade shows. I meet with a lot of people that are external to the company, whichever company I'm at. And I think obviously that's fantastic exposure. It's great to build my network in that way, but also it's, meeting a friend for coffee, as Eliska said. It's that person that was on your course at university that's now working at a company that you'd really like to apply to, and you can see them doing having a career path that you're really interested in, and you can reach out to them on, you've got their WhatsApp number from that group project that you did in final year or whatever. It's not just formal, today I'm going to build my network. It's everything that you do. And I think just by being pleasant and being approachable in the workplace really goes a long way to building a really robust network, rather than just going, this is an official networking opportunity, which I think are fewer and far between, rather than just, I met someone and chatted to them.
Exactly. And Sharon, do you have it marked on your calendar? As Aisling said, I'm going to build my network today. Do you have it marked that way, or is it something that you're gradually starting to do now?
I would say straight from uni. I think I'm around my third year of uni. I started becoming more aware of LinkedIn. And I think that is an app I would say is very important. Personally, very helpful as well. I think that's actually how I got the role from Bramble, from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is, I think it's just easy. You can just, maybe you see posts that people have liked or people have commented on, and if you feel like that's something you relate to, or if it's someone you're interested in knowing, how did they get into project management, for example, it's literally just a message away, and that is networking. Everything is sort of underneath that bracket of networking as well. You can easily just drop a message and say, oh, I'm interested in this line of work. How did you, enter the role? Are there any particular courses I should be taking? Is there any way I can, just all those type of questions? That those are part of networking. I completely agree with you in. I'm not a fan of actually going in person for networking events. I feel like that puts a lot of pressure. But I mean, I do think if that is something you're interested in, then definitely go for it. But I think it adds a layer of pressure, and it's not easy to be formal for an event throughout of it. So that is interesting. Like Eliska mentioned, just seeing people in the office, speaking to them for a couple of minutes, just having that sort of outgoing personality, making sure people know, you're approachable, because in the future, you may never know who you need, or even in the present, you may never know who you need help from. So it's just very easy. I think everything kind of boils down into networking.
Yes, definitely. And actually earlier, you mentioned a little bit about when you're new, and trying to make sure that you're heard, and that you have a voice. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, sometimes as a junior, you can feel like it's quite hard to feel like you have a voice. So do you have any advice on how to build that confidence? How did you build that up yourself?
Speaking from a personal experience on how I grew, or what happened to me rather, I feel like the more you grow in that particular job, the more confident you are. You have to be a little bit uncomfortable at some point. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, because the fact of it is, once you get comfortable and confident in your work, you get more confidence in yourself, because you can deliver what you need to be delivered, what you need delivered to a high standard. So once you keep on doing it day to day, the more you grow in it, the more you put yourself out there to go for events that you don't have to go to, but if you go, it will require some certain like level of work, more work to do, or just something like that. Not too much work that it's not a lot for you to is a lot for you to handle rather, but just kind of putting yourself out there. It could be, I'll use myself as an example. When I recently joined Bramble, like a couple months in, my manager assigned me to a project, well, two projects that I'm managing. It's very easy to want to shy away from it, because that's a lot of responsibility, and it's has to do with you speaking to a lot of people who are very like far more experienced than you, but it puts you out there. It makes you, want to learn what to do. It improves your public speaking, it improves presentation skills, because that's sort of what my role is. And taking on those two projects, that's what I had to do on a daily basis. Even having to do kickoff meetings with monitoring officers, it's very nerve-wracking at first, having to prepare slides, practice slides, but as you do it one time, two times, it's very easy. It's like second nature to you now. So I feel like that's how you grow. To be more confident, you have to just keep working. And once you're confident in what you're doing, you become confident in yourself.
Yes, I agree with everything you just said there. And actually, Ashley, you said something similar earlier about being uncomfortable. Sharon just mentioned there about being uncomfortable to move forward, to grow confidence. Is that something you would agree with? You, even if it's not a manager putting you in an uncomfortable position, find ways yourself to move forward, and it just means you do occasionally have to feel a little bit uncomfortable at work.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're if you're feeling uncomfortable, it probably means that you're growing and that you're developing a new skill. And I think obviously it can go too far the other way. And if you're spending every second of the day, feeling really uncomfortable and really overwhelmed, then maybe take a step back and say no to some things. But I would say in general, say yes to opportunities that come your way. And definitely I think I would trust that if somebody else is trusting you to do something, then you should trust that they think you can do it well, and therefore you will be able to do it well. Because, if you're working in a business, then, everybody wants, everybody's there for, ultimately the same goal, and that they want to work, they want the business to be successful. So they're not going to put you in a position to fail, because that will then reflect badly on the business. So people will only put you in difficult positions because they want you to grow and they want you to succeed. So I think you just have to trust in yourself that you can do it, and they wouldn't have asked you to do it if they didn't think you could too.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of reframing something instead of thinking, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
really not for me. Eliska, you mentioned the inner critic earlier, and I think we've all had that feeling where you think, oh no, that didn't go well, or I
Yes.
shouldn't be doing this.
I agree with the girls. There's only one way to grow and become comfortable is by putting yourself out there and doing the things that makes you feel uncomfortable. I look at my career and I know for a fact, especially the first year of my career, I probably shied away from a lot of things, and and that probably slowed down my career trajectory a little bit because I was too shy, and I thought that my English is not too good, and this and that. Big presentation in front of big bosses would absolutely terrify me. I would spend 3 nights before preparing for all of this. It was a lot, but eventually you get used to it. You get more comfortable. And one thing that I would add to it, if you get too comfortable, it's probably time to leave and move on to another job and
Yeah.
maybe crack on with something else. Because again, looking back at my career, that was a point where in my first job, there was a point where I got too comfortable and perhaps stayed for far too long when really I should have left like a year before that. So yeah, that's what I was just add to this.
That's a good point, actually. When you get too comfy, that's also not a good feeling. So you don't want to feel uncomfortable all day, but if you're too comfy, yeah, maybe it's time to look for something else.
Leave.
What about navigating tricky conversations? How can first-time jobbers navigate those tricky conversations in the workplace? Things like pay promotions, managing work-life balance. If you're quite new and quite young, they're quite difficult conversations to have with your manager. Sharon, how would you feel about that? How do you think you can navigate those conversations?
So in terms of, I will try to break it down, separate it, pay, promotions, work-life balance, etc. So for work-life balance, let me just start off from there. I feel like you need to learn how to say no, so you don't pick up more than you can handle. I know we've been talking about workload, but I think it's also very important because it's very easy as a first time worker to want to over impress. So you kind of take on work that's you're not sure you can deliver, or a lot of work is being dumped on you and you were just too shy to say no. So I feel like in terms of learning how to say no, you could sort of navigate how to say no, a constructive no, not just saying, oh, no, I can't do that. Maybe something like, I'm a bit busy with maybe XYZ at the moment, and I'll not be able to get to that task until the end of the week, for example, or I will not be able to get to that until the end of next week because I'm doing ABC. So it gives more context, and it's respectful, but it's also you laying your ground, is you saying, you can't take up that work at the moment. So it's basically seeing you saying no, but in a constructive way. So that's very important. I think it's something that needs to be incorporated. In terms of things like pay and promotions, I think it's very uncomfortable. Well, I find it uncomfortable personally. I do think is an uncomfortable topic slash subject, but I think you need to fight for what you believe in and what you think you deserve. I think it also links back into the confidence that we were talking about a few minutes ago. Once you're confident in your job or in your role and you're confident in what you can deliver, then that confidence will make you know what you deserve in that job role. Because if you know you're 100% going to be able to deliver above and beyond, and you've been doing this for, let's say, a year, the the odds are you probably want to be promoted. You probably want to be able to take up something higher. You want to be able to, have more responsibilities, take on more responsibilities. You have more experience now. You're not just new into the role. You now know what everything is, what everything entails, what is expected of you. You can probably even maybe start discussing you getting your own team if that's something you're interested in. But it's just you getting, I think everything still falls back into confidence, and it is very uncomfortable, 100%. But I guess it's something that pays off at the end, and it gives you some skills. Like there's some certain soft skills that you learn from just confronting I guess I wouldn't really tag it as confrontation, but it can come off as that, because I know some roles you would have to say, oh, they would literally ask you maybe, why do you think you deserve the promotion? And it's like you having confidence in what you can, give in that job, and then you stating it to them, this is what I can do, this is what I've done in the past year, this is what I've been able to deliver, this is how it has helped the company, or this is how it has helped my team, and that is why I feel like I deserve a pay rise or a promotion.
Yes, and I think good companies, they recognize good talent, so it's normally just fine that you're asking for what you feel you deserve. And sometimes it's just a good exercise to lay it out, and to what you do and what you've done over the last year, for instance, because if you do get a no and you do feel like going somewhere else, at least you've laid out everything that you did, and when you go and look for the next jobs, you have those skills already there. And as you said, you can demonstrate your value because you've had that awkward conversation. Aisling, you're nodding. Have you ever had one of those awkward conversations, or how do you navigate those in the workplace?
Definitely had a few conversations about pay and promotions previously, and I think often they can be really uncomfortable, but also I think it's really easy to build them up into some terrible conversation that's going to leave you, I don't know, there's going to be some terrible consequences because you brought it up, and it almost makes it worse than it actually will be in real life. So I think in order to go in and feel a bit calmer, rather than go in and going, I know this is going to go badly from the start, if you go in, as Sharon said, knowing your worth, and also being really prepared. So, looking, if you're talking about pay, look at sites like Glassdoor or similar, and look at what other people in your role or the next role above you are being paid at, in similar locations, in similar sized companies, similar job titles. What are other people in the similar sectors being paid, and what could you expect? And then also, I would say, try, even if it's not gone your way that time, try not to leave with just a flat out no. Try and leave with a, well, not this time, but if you do this, this, and this, you can be ready for that promotion the next time we have this conversation. Let's review it in, the next quarter, or let's review it when you feel like you've achieved those goals. Because there could be a really good reason why you're not ready for it. It could be that that's the way that the company's always done it. And then I would say challenge that, because why is it done like that? If you're if you believe that you're worth more than that, and they're just saying that's not procedure, then maybe it is time to move on. So yeah, I think always try and leave the room with obviously you want to come out with what you went in to get, but if you can't get that, try and come out with almost a checklist of, if I do these things, then next time it will be a successful conversation.
That's great advice, because otherwise you're just going to leave the room feeling like really deflated, feeling like I'm immediately leaving, going to look for my next role. Whereas you're right, if you have those goals and then the company still doesn't meet you there when whenever it is in a couple of months, then you think maybe this isn't the company for me then. Perhaps I'm not going to progress as much as I thought I did. But you're right, it's just at least putting that stake in the ground and leaving that meeting with something. Eliska, is that something that has ever happened to you, or how have you had those awkward conversations?
Yeah, so I had this awkward conversation in the past. I actually got promoted, and the amount of money that I got in terms of like pay rise was so minuscule. And I remember feeling so deflated. I remember feeling like, do you know what? I just got promoted and this is the pay rise. I feel like kicking off. I'm going to kick off. and so I did. I did have that awkward conversation with my manager at the time, and I just got that flat out no. And I tried really hard, but it made me realize, do you know what? It's time for me to leave, and that's okay. Ultimately, I think these conversations shouldn't be that awkward. If your manager is cool, you can work on a plan to, progress within, because a lot of companies have certain pay bands. So there's always a way around it, but they were just not very accommodating and willing to do that. And that was okay. One of the things that I do find tricky and have also made that mistake in the past is salary negotiations when you're in the what is it called? When you're in the let me cut this out. Interview is the word.
Good to see you reaching.
Thank you. That is a mistake that I've made in the past where I was given a number and I thought, this is amazing, and I settled. That is a terrible thing. Nobody should ever do this. And since then, I have really educated myself on this topic and how to go about these conversations, because I've made this mistake twice now and nobody should do that mistake. So I'd like to put it out there.
Yeah, because I think you just kind of hear the number and you settle and you think, all right, I'll wait a year and then maybe I'll
but you leaving money on the table, and that's what happened to me. Yeah.
Amazing. So we are almost out of time. So I wanted to ask you ladies one final question. Do you have any final pieces of advice for our listeners? Eliska, that was a great piece of advice there, going back in and asking for more. Do you have any other advice for our listeners?
I would say, look, if an opportunity presents itself and if it scares you, it's probably a good idea. Don't let these self-limiting beliefs to stop you from the things that you really want to do. That would be my advice.
Amazing. Aisling, yourself, final piece of advice.
Yeah, I think I would say don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, and yeah, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and challenge yourself to do the next thing, because that's when you're going to grow and that's when you're going to progress.
Definitely. And Sharon, yourself?
I would say progressing from education, from just being, from just uni to corporate environment is definitely nerve-wracking. It can be uncomfortable and it could make you anxious, but that's life. And a stepping stone, once you're making a huge stepping stone like that, because that has the probability to define kind of the rest of your life, it's good for it to be not overwhelming, for it to be uncomfortable, because that means you're learning a lot, you're entering a new phase of your life, there's a lot to learn, you have the whole world ahead of you. So just calm down, choose what you want, and if don't feel the pressure of wanting to know what you want to work in or what industry you want to work in immediately. There's a lot of time left for you. You have a lot of time to experiment and see what sticks or doesn't.
Yes, and everybody's feeling that way. We all feel that way. We've all felt it at one point, that you don't have to pick so early on. If you're not the only one that's thinking, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. A lot of us don't know.
Exactly.
Fabulous. So we are out of time, ladies. I could talk all afternoon on this. So Sharon, Aisling, Eliska, thank you so much for joining me today to chat. It's been an absolute pleasure and it has flown by. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody, as always, to everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you again next time.